Hello, property nomads. Hope you're well. Just a quick favour to ask you before we crack on with the content, which is about North Sea oil and gas. And that favour is if you could possibly, please subscribe to the channel. We're finding that numbers are increasing, and that's down to you taking action. It's down to us giving a call to action as well. And also, people are starting to comment more on the videos and like the content even more. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and tell everyone else about the channel as well. We're growing very nicely, and that's all down to you. So thank you for doing that. So oil and gas, yes, of course, they're big eco no-nos at the moment. And we've got an article we're going to look at from The Guardian. Again, link to that is going to be in the description. And it's basically saying that there's been an analysis that's been done, and that 80% of North Sea oil is exported. Now, we've done episodes before, or we've done videos before, where we're talking about energy security. And given the way the world is at the moment and what's happening and what's likely to happen moving forwards, it's imperative that things get better. It's imperative that we must have energy security, because if the proverbial really does hit the fan, then we're in a lot of trouble. And as an island nation, geographically speaking, we're pretty good for a lot of things. But in the age of nuclear and so forth, it's not so good. However, the share of UK's oil and gas that is exported, apparently, has increased from 60% to 80% over the last 2 decades. Now, this is good to an extent, because there's two sides to the story here. That we've said, and we say, that you need to be energy efficient. So if you're drilling and you're getting all this oil and whatnot, then surely it makes sense to keep all of that oil and whatever it is you're drilling. Absolutely. But the way that the article in The Guardian have spun this is that, oh my God, it's the end of the world. We're exporting more. We're doing all this environmental damage by drilling, and we're doing all of that, and this is completely unacceptable, etc., etc., etc. Eco, yada, yada, yada. So, right, this is why there's two sides to the story. Give me a second. I've got a really croaky throat. You can tell I'm getting too excited because my throat's getting a bit croaky. Apologies for that. So two sides to the story. People are going to say, well, if you're searching for all this oil and gas, then that's not good because you're doing environmental damage. Oh, by the way, you're now exporting more than you did. You're just, feeding the conglomerates. You don't care about the environment. You don't care about this. You don't care about that. So you've got the eco side. And then you've got the way that the mainstream media will mess around with it as well, which is, again, oh my God, net zero, oh, we're never going to meet it, all this oil and drilling, cry, 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 cry. What it doesn't go into is that the amount has increased, as in the exports have increased, for two reasons. Number one, the government's got a big deficit, as we know, a couple of trillion pounds. Now, you're going to need to claw back on that as best as you can, because, we're all going to be in financial peril anyway, more so the USA, because of trillions of dollars in deficit. But the UK is not much better. So we need to either cut back on stuff and increase revenue at the same time. We need to do both. So exporting more oil and gas is actually going to increase revenues. Secondly, what isn't going to help is the oil that comes out of the North Sea. And I'm not an oil expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the oil that comes out of the North Sea isn't readily usable. It needs to go away to be refined, to then be brought back into the UK for use. I don't think we have my understanding is we don't have the systems and processes in place in order to refine that oil. So we're drilling more and we're producing more oil, and yes, more of that's being exported. That's why that figure's gone up from 60% to 80%. And what's happened is, or what's happening, I believe, is that is then being refined to then come back to us. Now, there's obviously going to be some arbitrage going on there. So the question then becomes, are we getting ripped off when it's being refined and coming back to us? At what point or what price are we paying there? Now, that I don't have an answer for. But that's one thing that you would need looking at. So let's attack this coherently. Yes, exports are going up. Okay, fine. That's going to get the eco backs up, and the eco warriors are going to cry into their hemp pillows about that. Then that oil is going off and being refined. It's then being sold back to us. Now, is that being sold back to us at rip-off prices? I don't know. But if we're selling it in the first place, is that increasing revenues? I mean, theoretically it is. Then who's benefiting from that? Is the UK government or UK companies benefiting from that or not? And that's really what people have got to look at on this, not just oil exports have increased, it's the end of the world, we're all going to die. That's not really quite the case. I'm just going to screen share the article with you because the key paragraph is right here. And the key paragraph is this. And I'll give credit to Guardian, it does say. So the UK's refinery capacity and its ability to handle its own fossil fuels has fallen sharply during that period. So the period that they're looking at for these statistics is between 2004 and 2022. Nevertheless, the analysis has fueled ongoing criticism of the Prime Minister's claims that awarding annual gas and oil licenses to offshore companies will help reduce the UK's reliance on international energy markets. So this is where it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Again, we've set a benefit of hindsight. When it comes to energy security, whether it's nuclear, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, you've got to continually invest in these things. And the government, this government, previous government under Labour as well, they should have been consistent with investing in the infrastructure, building up capacity, and so forth. But we've neglected that for the last 15, 20, 25 years. This is why we're going to have energy issues moving forward. So we dug ourselves our own grave, basically. The awarding of annual gas and oil licenses to offshore companies, will that help to reduce the UK's reliance on international energy markets? I'd like to say that it would, but will it? Probably not. Because again, it would be interesting to know how many ministers and whatnot have got their hands in all these pies and how many of these ministers own oil and gas companies, etc., or have shareholdings in such companies. So of course, they're going to want to line their own pockets. But do we need more energy security internationally? Absolutely, we do. Are we doing enough to do that? I think it's been spun that we are, but we're probably realistically not in the background. And that is a big shame because we do need to be doing these sorts of things. So yeah, very interesting article. That'll be in the description below. Make of it what you will. And again, just summarising it in general, oil exports from the North Sea have increased from 60 to 80%. That's because the UK doesn't have the capacity to be able to refine its own products because of the lack of investment in that sector in the last quarter of a century. Therefore, what we produce, a lot of it has to be exported, a lot of it's being refined and then sent back to us. So I'm sure there's great arbitrage there as well. And it goes down to, if we want to become energy efficient and energy reliant, we have to look at our own infrastructure in the UK. And it's okay increasing exports and hopefully the government gets revenue from that. But then they're probably buying back at a higher price, offsetting that in the first place. And the key thing is you've got to be looking at exports. You've got to look at the you've got to be looking at the infrastructure within the UK itself. Is the government doing enough to do that? Well, again, for the last 25 years, neither government has done that very well, and I'm sure that's not going to happen moving forward. But yes, the way it's been reported, it's like it's doom and gloom and it's the end of the world. It's not quite the case, but again, the article misses out completely on infrastructure, or again, investing in infrastructure, because that really is the solution here. As always, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.